Performing this music has been really meaningful to me because it's been a chance to both honor this man who has had such an impact on my training, my philosophy, my way of playing the harp, but also to really do this music in the way that he intended it to be done. And I feel so lucky to have studied with someone who really knew every little nook and cranny of this music and was able to impart that to me. And hopefully the result is an album that's very, very accurate to his artistic wishes. The Salzedo philosophy encompasses several things, one of which is just the nuts and bolts of technique, the finger to string, how one goes about producing the sound. Another aspect of it is philosophical, what the harp should be on the concert stage, what the range of the harp can be, not just very pretty and delicate, which of course it should and is some of the time, but that it can be really assertive and dynamic and energetic and fiery and sensual and all those other things as well that really interesting instruments really are, and the harp certainly is an interesting instrument when played to its full potential. And the third element of Salzedo's philosophy, I guess we'll call it, is the aesthetic, which involves the visual, which in many cases you can't separate the aesthetic from the auditory, because what you do when you leave a string, how you approach a string, has so much to do with what the string actually does in terms of resonance and reverberation. You play a string like this, it's going to sound very differently than if you play a string like this. And Salzedo really, really went after an aesthetic that complemented and enhanced the element that you hear. Well, I think probably each piece on this album encompasses his whole philosophy, because he, like so many great people, he was what he felt. You can't separate his philosophy, his passion, from what he did. So everything he wrote promoted those elements. However, the way I've developed this album is that they represent his three compositional styles as I see them. The first is the traditional, and he was very interested in promoting the widespread appreciation of the harp. He didn't want it to be this rarefied thing that only a very small segment of the population could appreciate. He wanted it to be accessible. And the first piece on the album is his variations on a theme in ancient style, which is not only lovely and tuneful and catchy in a lot of ways, but it's also a wonderful tribute to his technical philosophies, because each variation presents different technical challenges for the harpist. It's a series of hoops for the harpist to jump through, and it's fun for an audience to watch because it is challenging, and it's a little bit like watching a trapeze artist go through the various elements. And so that piece, I feel, is a really, really wonderful example of his traditional commitment to accessibility. I also included after that in the traditional format 4 of his 8 dances, my favorites really, because they're all of a Latin Spanish flavor: the Tango, Rumba, Seguidilla, and Bolero. And those dances are great encores. They're wonderful as a set on a program, and they're just the kind of thing that audiences hum on the way out of the hall. That was the Salzedo design harp that was created by Witold Gordon, who was a designer, and created by Lyon and Healy Harps in collaboration with Carlos Salzedo. And I think it's rather incredible that this design has really persisted, and you see a lot of these harps out there. I mean, relatively speaking. And I just love the sound of it. I love the feel of it. I love the look of it. The column is a really striking, angular, multi-leveled wooden structure that I think is both graceful and elegant and really powerful at the same time. Well, I would say it never really occurred to me that one could play the harp. I grew up in Norman, Oklahoma, and there were not tons of harpists running around at that point. There are actually quite a few harpists in Oklahoma now, but when I was coming up, it was not a common instrument there. And our family took a trip to Chicago for the weekend. I remember it was Valentine's Day weekend, and they had a very elaborate display in the window of Lyon and Healy harps, which at that time, Lyon and Healy now just makes harps, but they had a window. It was like a half a block long storefront window full of harps. And they had pictures of 20 harps playing in an ensemble up at the Interlochen Arts Academy, where they take harps every summer to use. And I was just transfixed by this idea of the harp, which had never really occurred to me. My mother had been teaching me to play the piano since I was 3, and I was very serious about that. But I really got the bug. And we ordered a small little harp to see if I liked it. And because I'd had so much piano training, it came very quickly. And I think sometimes with things, when they feel easy to you, you're more likely to keep after them. And you're so hooked by the time it starts getting really hard that you can't turn back then. And so I think my early piano training was really valuable in getting me hooked on this instrument, which really is quite difficult. But at the beginning, I already knew so much of the basics. And the harp and the piano at the beginning are very similar. Different technique, but the concepts are the same. So it got me hooked, and then it was pretty much all over from there. Well, I would say I'd like to keep doing what I'm doing. I don't want any of that to end, but I would really like to be very actively participating in the commissioning of new works. I think that's the next priority frontier for me, because I think harpists who are out there performing need to be involved in inspiring the great composers of our day to write for the instrument. And that's a lost opportunity if we're not doing that. And my next big project is a commission with the composer Bright Sheng. And I have a consortium of orchestras that are commissioning and sponsoring this harp concerto, and that'll be premiered in the fall of '08. And that's exciting for me because that will be recorded by Telarc, which is wonderful, and it's to me the beginning of what I hope is at least a decade-long process of inspiring composers to do what they do, but do it for the harp. And I hope to be really involved along the way too, because the harp is an odd bird, and I think you kind of need somebody who understands it a lot to work with you along the way.